Principles versus preferences. I don't even want to use this example. It hurts my heart so much. I'm going to share it. I work with this single mother coaching. She did this phenomenal work while we were together. Then all of a sudden, she just quit out of nowhere. I couldn't reach her. She wouldn't talk to me. But what we did create were certain principles that, based on the coaching, she said, I didn't say it, she said, this is the way I'm going to live. What she chose had predictable results, that if she had stayed aligned with the principles, then her life would look a completely different way than what it looks now. Then I find out the reason she fell off your radar is because she got pregnant and had another child. So now she's not a single mother twice, she's a single mother 3 times. And she's starting all over again. Regret for living based on a preference. I know that, like there was a preference versus a principle. And the preference was taken over the principle. And now you have to deal with regret.
Change up the things you see. Open your mind to possibilities. Find your power, passion, and purpose. You know it's time for you to walk in greatness. Let's murder mediocrity. Slay your goals, live out your dreams. Right now. Inspirational perspective. Open your mind to a better life. It's time to live your dream. Your purpose now. Inspirational perspective. Let's slay your goals.
I've been really prayerful and thoughtful about, okay, so I got this run here where I'll be here live on Sundays for quite some time, over and beyond what it's been. Because the travel was, I think we were like 2 weeks on, a week off, things like that. And so it's good to be back. And it's like, okay, what does the audience need? Yesterday, I started rereading a book I read some time ago. And in the introduction of the book, and high level, the book's about principles. And it's part of what we're going to talk about today. One of the reasons I started rereading this book. In the very beginning of the book, it said that one of the major principles of teaching is to give babies milk and men meat. And to ensure that you're not giving meat to babies because they'll choke, right? It just don't help them, right? And in this context, as I talk about meat, like meat being like the most desired high quality substance that provides the protein, nutrients that a man needs, right? And a woman, but you guys get the point, right? Okay. So you give milk to babies and you give meat to men. And the principle of teaching, like the wisdom of teaching, is that you don't want to exhaust yourself trying to basically give milk to men who it's just not enough, number one, right? Which means they don't come back to feed anymore. Or 2, give meat to babies where they choke on it and they refuse it. And so it's interesting because yesterday I sat there thinking, I was like, man, when you're doing radio, you don't always know who you're talking to. You don't know if intellectually, from a place of maturity, regardless of age, if the individual is a baby regarding a particular topic. And nor do you know if that individual is ready for meat. Like, you just don't know. So this kind of had me, thinking for a while in terms of what I bring on the radio and the impact of that. And by the way, I've been thinking about the impact of this show a lot lately. And really praying about the purpose of this show a lot lately. Man, if I'm getting up on Sundays, coming down here, teaching, supporting, interviewing, whatever it may look like what is the best way to reach and support people, which is a huge part of my purpose. Like, I've really, really been thinking about that. Okay, so then I'm thinking about this, and it finally hits me. Well, the idea is to teach as if you have babies in the audience and men in the audience, right? Like, and just like slow it down. And if the men, and when I'm saying this, by the way, like mentally mature wise, in terms of where you are in your life, what you've created, if those of you who can be meat eaters, or men who can eat meat, like if they're getting meat, then that takes time to chew anyway. So then you can always spin back and say, here's a little milk. So you'll notice a difference in how I'm teaching, because that's something I'm really going to be paying attention to, ensuring that there's something for everybody where you are. And it's one of the reasons I want to start with this particular conversation. Now, most of you all know, I grew up 2-family households, blessed to have my father, blessed to have my mother, Christian household, incredibly strict Christian household. And there were certain things that I grabbed onto, and certain things that I was kind of like, that's just way too much. Like, you know, when you grow up in a household like that, like there's certain things where you're like, okay, I fundamentally get why my parents do that or are asking me to do this. And then there are other things where I was just like, what? What's happening here? Like, why are we doing this, right? And what I began to notice is whenever there was context for what my parents were asking, right? Because my father, one of the things you've learned about me if you listen often, is that my father was a big fan of Proverbs, and so he used to make us read Proverbs all the time, like over and over again. It's 7 months in the year has 31 days. Then he was reading a chapter a day. Like, it's kind of how he went, right? And I'm incredibly grateful for that. And I'll get back to that in a moment. But he had us read Proverbs. Proverbs is called the book of wisdom, right? It's written by the wisest man in all the world. And I believe in all time, right? And so it's the book of wisdom. But Proverbs is also a book of principles. I'm going somewhere with this, so y'all stick with me, okay? It's also a book of principles. And as I've been thinking about this show in particular, and this audience in particular, this community in particular, and how to more deeply reach and connect in alignment with my own purpose, the first thing that hit me was, if at this point anyone who listens to me every Sunday is not living intentionally with principles, not principles I set up, right, but just principles that work for them, then we've missed something major in the last 13 years. And this next series is about making sure that that is a leverage point for every show I do from now on. Like, for the remainder of however long I'm blessed to be on this platform. It's like, I want to, like, this is, in some ways you can call it a reset point, where I want people to be incredibly clear about the underlying principles that drive me. And I want you to begin thinking about the underlying principles, if any, that drive you. Now, principles are powerful. And so the scary part is when I say the principles that drive you, if any, like that part is scary, because I also believe that there are a lot of us that are not living in alignment with any particular principle on purpose. In fact, without Without the knowledge that we should be, this is one of the reasons our lives have been surrounded by chaos. So I think that is a great segue into today's title and the question that I'll be asking. And that is, today's topic is the power of principles, how to stop making the same mistakes forever. Like, how do you stop making the same mistakes? Is by using the power of principles. Question number 1. Are you living on purpose or just reacting to what life sends you? Are you living on purpose or are you just reacting to whatever life sends you? That's the first question. I really want you to sit and think about that. And I want you to sit and think about that because for most intelligent human beings, if you hear a question like that, there's an answer that you want to give that you almost intuitively give without thinking about it. Well, of course I'm living on purpose. Of course, I am living on purpose. Of course I'm living on purpose, and I am absolutely not reacting to the things that happen in my life. And then even as you say that, you start thinking like, well, well, there was that thing yesterday, or there was, right? And so then, like, if you really begin to ask yourself this question and remove judgment, but like from a place of, I truly want to be a better person, not for anyone else, but first for myself. Or I truly want to be a better person in terms of my spiritual alignment with God. Like maybe that should be first and then for myself, right? I truly want to be a better person. If that's the case, then this is a question. This should be a question that you're asking yourself almost daily. Now, the trouble with that is that if we create a daily question, that means that almost immediately you have to live with some level of intention. That intent being to ask yourself that question every day. And that's what I'm afraid most of us are missing. That's what I'm afraid most of us are missing, is to be in the question of our life, like the question of my life. When I wake up in the morning and I'm breathing, that I am living in the question of, why was I blessed to wake up and what is the work that I'm supposed to be doing? Like that question. Not to take it for granted, but to wake up and say, wow, what a blessing. I'm awake another day. And why exactly am I awake today? What impact am I supposed to make? Like to be living within that question, like allowing that question to consume me immediately brings some level of intent to my life that creates fertile ground for principles. And I believe that when you are not in or living in that question, then basically it creates all the room that most of us have to live by default. So then basically things just happen to you. So then here's another question, right? Because we go to that very first question of, are you living on purpose or are you just reacting to life? And then if I'm living on purpose, then the other really big part of that question is, okay, then what exactly is that purpose? Like what exactly is the intent for my life? The power of principles. The power of principles. So then, if I'm going to live in alignment with principles, that means that I'm actually giving up control. I'm actually giving up control and saying that instead of living by my own personal preferences, which personally I found don't work well, right? I tried that for a while. It just did not work well. And by the way, if you're living a life based on preferences right now, you don't even have to call me. I can tell you there are the majority of what's going on in your life is not working. It's just not working. I want to make this crystal clear. If in your health, you are only moving based on preferences, you're likely sickly, you likely carry some disease, you likely are not healthy, you're likely overweight, if you're living based on preference alone, you know what I would like right now? I'm thirsty. What would I prefer? Like, if that's how you're living, I can guarantee what you go find to drink is not going to be based in principles of health, but rather preference. And so when I'm living in alignment with my personal preferences, it gets me in a lot of trouble. It gets me in a whole lot of trouble because those preferences are urges that are coming from the lower parts of my humanity, my physicality, and not the higher parts of the intent for my life, right? Think lower part, higher part, lower part being preferences, higher part being principles. So, are you living on purpose or are you just reacting to life? And here's the second question. And so if you are living on purpose, then what are your top 3 principles? Because that should be very clear. It should be you should know. This is how I live. Here are my top 3 principles. And it's not something you got to sit and think about right now because you should know them. And if you have to sit and think about it, then I would have you consider that you are not living a life that is in alignment with principle. More likely, you're living a life that is in alignment with your preferences. So then, what's the cost of that? Here's the truth that most of us don't want to be with. Most of us are operating based on habits, emotions, and outside influences. Those are the 3 principles we're living by. Well, I don't even want to call them principles. Let's say call them the 3 preferences that we're living by. We're living by the preference of the habits I already have because that's easy. The emotions I always feel because, well, I don't necessarily know what to do about that. And the influences from the outside because it gives me some level of temporary pleasure or emotional feeling. So it kind of circles right back into your emotions, circles right back into your habits. And that's the truth. And I would say largely the majority of us are living our lives based in habits that we've created, not habits that we enjoy, by the way. Like, they're just habits. There's someone in my circle, and I can tell he doesn't like drinking. I can tell. Because if we're all together, let's say, and he drinks too much that night, the next day he'll call me and be like, man, I shouldn't have done. I'm done. And I think the reason he calls me is because I don't drink. Like, I don't drink like that. So he'll call me because, like the other ones might be like, man, you cool. You wasn't bad last night. I'll be like, well, if that's the case, then what does living like without that look like? Those are the kind of questions I ask. So he'll have that conversation, man, I'm done. And then the next time, maybe we're on the golf course or something, the little drink cart comes around, and I see him make his order. He's a grown man. I just let him, right? And he'll do his thing, and I'm like, and it's hot here. We're gonna be in the same conversation later. I'm done. Why did I do that? Right? But it's a habit. It's a habit. And in the absence of a commitment to a principle, that habit will win every time. In the absence of a surrendering to the Creator in that area of your life, that habit will win every time. And for men, that surrender part is hard, by the way. Like full surrender means I don't get to make the decision here anymore. Like I'm giving it to you and you make the decision every time. That's tough. But there's a benefit to it, and that's part of what I want to talk about later today. Like the benefit of living a principled life, the power of principles. And the power of principles and the benefit of living a principled life is that you can finally stop making the same mistakes forever. Principles versus preferences. Preferences shift with your mood. Preferences shift based on how you feel. Preferences shift based on circumstance and situation. You may have a preference for something given a certain circumstance, and then the circumstance change and you no longer prefer that. That doesn't mean that a principle was driving the decision. It's just what you prefer in the moment, right? And so preferences shift. Principles stay steady, and principles guide you. I believe, for instance, that every leader, if you call yourself a leader, every leader, because leadership is something that you are intentionally providing other people. And so if I have the intent to lead other people, then I should have guiding principles that I can actually articulate to these people to say, this is the way that I will be guiding you. Now, I don't know about y'all, but if I'm following a leader, y'all tracking with me? If I'm looking at someone and I'm saying I'm willing to follow this person, this includes me, by the way, you should have an understanding of their guiding principles because they're about to guide you somewhere. So you may want to have some type of understanding of their guiding principles. Right now, I want you to think about the person whose leadership you follow. Do you know their guiding principles? And if you don't, you probably should ask, what are your guiding principles? Because here's the beautiful thing about principles. Again, principles don't change. Like, I'm not asking for your guiding preferences, leader. I'm asking for your guiding principles. What are your guiding principles? Principles stay steady. So now, this leader, there's some way for me to predict, given certain situations, how they make decisions and likely predict the decision that they will make, given the circumstance or situation. They will always likely make that they be like that leader is a pillar because of their principles, because of their guiding principles. I'll come back to that. We're going to talk about leadership like completely separate in terms of principles. So what I'm saying is that as human beings, if we don't stand for something, we will fall for just about anything. Now, why is that important these days? Like, I think we all get it. Why is that important these days? For those of you on Facebook, like, just drop in a comment why you believe that's important. Same thing for you guys on YouTube. Like, why would it be important that I stand for something in 2025? That I actually have certain principles that I am standing on in my life, regardless of how you answered the question before when I asked what your top 3 principles are. regardless of how you answered that question, would you say that you should have a top 3? Like, I should have some very clear principles that I use to guide my life, that I use to guide my health, that I use to guide my relationships. Like, hey, I may not be the best at choosing people to be in a relationship with, but I do have at least one principle. Like, there's one steady thing that I use to make this decision. Here's the crazy part. Like, that's all it really takes for you to make better decisions. That's all it really. Like, that one principle probably gets you into a relationship, like a good one. One principle. I think sometimes it don't take all that. I'm not saying it takes a whole lot. It just takes a little bit of intention. Just a little bit. So, what are your guiding principles? What are your guiding principles in terms of what is the principle that you take into your work? No matter what, no matter who my boss is, no matter what's going on in the company, this is how I will work. Because I imagine if you work based on that principle and you're clear on it, like a lot of things that happen to other people at your job won't happen to you. Because they'll be like, nah, he's too predictable. We can't let him go. Like, we know exactly how this guy is going to work. We know exactly how she's going to show up. Like, it's like clockwork. Let everybody else go. Can't afford to let this principled employee go. That's the power of principles. That is the power of principles. No principles, you're expendable. I don't think I have to point to this in terms of purpose and spirituality. But even in finances, like, what is your financial, are you operating your finances off of some financial principle? So this is how I because I can guarantee, it only takes one to be wealthy. It don't, like, this is not a conversation, as we talk about principles, this is not a conversation we have to overcomplicate. My biggest fear is that the principles just don't exist. And we know them. We live in the information age, so we know a whole lot. That doesn't mean that it is something I apply to my life with discipline every day. Like, I am completely committed to this principle, top 3 principles of your life. What is a principle? What is a principle? And let me, again, first 2 questions. 1, are you living on purpose or just reacting to life? Question 2, do you have a clear set of principles? I asked at least 3 that you know right now. You can call out, these are the 3 principles that guide my life. Or is your life preference based? And I think in the first 40 minutes of the show, made it very clear why preference-based living is not attractive, for any of us. Okay, so now, by the way, let me say this. When you look at how we've been designed, like as human beings, like how we've been designed, like, and you have to, if you don't believe this, then this conversation doesn't work for you. But if you believe in a creator, so you believe that you were created, so then you're designed. Then if you're designed, that means that as a design, like, you likely function better if you follow certain instructions. Right? My daughter, she has this toy. It's battery operated. It's not submersible. One of the principles in the instructions is do not submerge this underwater. Okay? Well, my daughter can't read yet. She doesn't understand that principle. And so she submerged it under water, right? Playing. She says, Daddy, it doesn't work anymore. Well, yes, because you disobeyed the principle. Now, she didn't know she disobeyed the principle. I'm making a point here that one of the reasons things aren't working in many of our lives is because we're not following the instructions. It is not submergible. Y'all get my point? And then you're like, well, why isn't this working? Well, because you're not following fundamental principles. Fundamental principles. That's why it's not working. Okay. So a principle is a timeless truth that produces predictable results when applied. Now, Ade's here in the studio with me. Let me ask you a question, Ade. How would you feel if I told you that if you follow just one law, it will produce predictable results for you every time? Every time you apply this law, it's going to produce a predictable result. Would that be something that you're attracted to?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the reason I'm because it seems so common sense, but then let's say I put a certain principle out there. So you think of a principle that you desire to follow. Can you think of one, like a principle in your life that you desire to follow? Is there one that you can think of?
I guess in the realm of health and well-being, like try to eat right or healthy.
You started laughing when you said it. Yeah. Well, why did you start laughing?
Because, I was thinking about the preferences conversation.
Oh, preferences get in the way of principle.
Yeah.
So let's go back to this. I asked you the question, if I could give you a law to follow that provides you predictable results when you apply it, would you take it? You said yes, for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then when we applied it, then we took the law and we said, now let's apply it to eating. Mm-hmm. It was like, oh. Now what got in the way? Preferences?
Yeah.
Preferences got in the way?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So now we can see that cognitively, it makes a lot of sense to have a desire to follow principle. But in application, preferences create a problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I understand the law, but I have preferences. So, but again, remember that if I follow the law, I get predictable results every time. Like every time I apply it, I get predictable results. If I follow the law. But then when I'm following laws, I have to deal with my internal preferences. How do we contend with that? How do we contend with that? Let me give you an example. So a number of us in the Slayer Goals community just finished up a 7-day cleanse. Okay. Now, cleansing is based on a fundamental health and well-being principle, right? I think we all know this. Okay. So cleansing is based on a fundamental cleansing, fasting, all these things are based on fundamental health and well-being principles. And if I go through a cleanse or I go through a fast, it will produce a predictable result every time. Every time I go through the cleanse, there's more clarity. I feel like there's more energy, there's more mental clarity, there's more spiritual clarity. Like everything, those are predictable results. Every time I go through a cleanse, I feel better physically. My desire for my preferences actually curbs, right? Like the things that I preferred before the cleanse I no longer prefer based on the principle of cleansing. I don't even have a preference for it. I haven't, since the cleanse ended recently, and we go through the post-cleanse. But there are things that I'm not even attracted to. I go to the grocery store, and it's kind of like go down the snacks aisle. Not even tempting, because the principle of cleansing has predictable results. Predictable results. Now, fast forward a month ago, if I had walked down the aisle, I might be like, buddy, that's not good for you, bro. I got to be in a conversation about my preferences. But the principle of cleansing is so predictable that I'm so clear that I don't even have to, like, my preferences have actually shifted. So the power principle is like when I commit to a principle, that's what shifts my preferences. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the difference between knowing a principle but battling preferences is the level of commitment that you have to that principle. Because the more committed you become to the principle itself, the less attractive your preferences are. When I decided to commit to a new principle around my diet, the first year or so, I had to battle preferences. But as long as the more I allowed the principle of how I intended to eat dominate my life, eventually my preferences changed. Now I could be in a room where everybody else has bacon and I do not. There's no preference for it. I don't want it because I'm so clear based on the results of the principle I've applied in my life. I see the results so clearly that it has actually extinguished the preference for it. There's no preference for that anymore. I don't have to battle preferences in that area. I don't have to battle preferences around soda. I don't have to battle preferences around sweet drinks. Matter of fact, the last time I had a sweet drink was in Ghana. I had a Sprite. And I remember it's like to settle my stomach. And I remember I was like, is Sprite this sweet? Is this normal? I was like, and somebody was like, well, yeah, that's what a Sprite tastes like. And because it's been so long, and even it was very clear why I was having a Sprite, right? It wasn't to quench my thirst. It was to settle my stomach. I wanted the bubbles and all that. I haven't had a Sprite since because even having, it's not something I would prefer. I'm like, someone's drinking something that sweet? That's not a preference of mine anymore because I've allowed the principle to take over in my life. So the reason principles are powerful is because, one, they give me clarity in my decision making. If you're an adult and you've been having to navigate this life and you got to make decision after decision, you got to make decisions for your family, you got to make decisions for your children, you got to make decisions for your loved ones, maybe your parents are getting older, you got to make decisions for them. You got to make decisions. Do you want to make decisions based on your preferences and then you don't really necessarily know how that's going to go? Or do you want to make decisions based on principle? Principle. What's scary to me is sometimes I believe as parents, some of us as parents are making decisions about our children's lives based on our financial preferences. Versus saying there are certain principles that are important that I instill in my child, and that might create some level of financial sacrifice, and I'm okay with that. But because I love my child so much, I would rather raise them based on principles that have predictable results. We follow? Predictable results when I apply them than to raise them based on my preferences. I had a conversation with my son the other day that I preferred not to have. Y'all follow? Like, it would have been so much easier to be like, I'm just going to let it go. Like, the preference was to let it go. Like, it's not that big of a deal. But because of what I'm committed to from a place of principle, I realized him and I got to have a serious conversation. It's going to be an emotional conversation. And the conversation is going to set some guidelines for what discipline looks like moving forward. And that's not going to be fun. But I'm doing it because I'm committed to certain principles in terms of how I raise that boy and transform him into a man. And I want the predictable result of man. And if I'm going to get the predictable result of man, then that means I have to follow certain principles. And so one of the principles is we got to have this conversation. And the conversation was all about, like, his tone with the women in his life. His mother, his grandmother, his sister. I'm noticing it. I saw him coming in with his grandmother from outside. I was looking outside. I saw him coming in. He had a lemonade in his hands. He was like, just like life was good. Hey, give me that lemonade. Come here. We got upstairs. He was like, what's up, Dad? You want to show me something? Nah, we need to talk. That's when he looked like, man, what'd I do? Yeah. I heard how you was talking. Now we have to have a principled conversation because I intend to get predictable results from raising you. Y'all follow? And him and I both together set terms. So then if he doesn't follow the terms, there's a predictable outcome. That's how we get predictable results. All right. So the reason principles are powerful is because they give clarity in decision making. They create consistency in my action as a parent, right? If we take that principle with my son. And I can align my daily choices with that in a way that provides long-term purpose. So now I can wake up in the morning and actually know what direction I'm driving. Like, this is how I'm driving my life. And I can also be clear and sure that I'm going to get where I intend to go because principles produce predictable results. Let me give you some examples. There's one principle that we all know, and it's called the law of focus. We all know this principle. The law of focus says that what you focus on expands. That's the law of focus. So if I believe in that principle and I'm living aligned with that principle, then I'm being very thoughtful and clear about where I focus my attention. Do I focus my attention on my flaws or my strengths? Do I focus my attention on my wife's flaws or her strengths? Do I focus my attention on my employees' flaws or their strengths? Do I you follow? Now, if the law states that what I focus on expands, what do you think I'm focused on? That's a clear one, right? Here's another example of a principle. Actually, that one might be the principle of purpose alignment. That's a whole nother lesson. So, but I want to ask you this. If your life were a building, the same way we create structures today, these big skyscrapers downtown, right behind us here to the east. If your life were a building, what would you say your foundation is made of today? Principles or preferences? If your life were a building, what would you say you've built your life on? Principles or preferences? I just want you to sit and think, sit and be with that for a minute. Have you built your life on principles, because here's the beautiful thing about principles, like, then you already know what the outcome will be. You already know the direction of your life. You already know your trajectory. Because principles come with a promise. But if you've built it on preferences, well, I mean, which way is the wind blowing in 2025? And then if it blows a different direction in 2026, there you go. What is the cost of living my life without principles? Well, first, let me give you some warning signs, because I'm still not convinced that folks believe they're living aligned with preferences, because we want to think the best. I want to think the best of myself, right? I want to believe that I'm moving in a way that is, aligned with what I want most. But I think we all know that's not generally the case. But that's what we want. But is it how I'm living? So here are some signs that my life is aligned. Here are some signs that, or more so, here are some signs that I'm not living with principle. I'm constantly reacting versus being proactive in my life. So if I wake up with an intent for the day, does that intent get met? Am I moving throughout the day with the resolve that meets that intent? Or is the intent left behind because I had to react to things? See, because when I'm not living a life that's aligned with principle, I'm constantly reacting. What about this? Well, Linnell, you don't understand my family situation, and here's what's going on with my mom, or then my grandkids this, and Linnell, if you understood, well, what I'm saying is, if you're filtering all that through principle, then your actions start to become more predictable, and it's not always what you prefer. There's some people I tell no. I didn't want to tell. Like, I would prefer just to give you the money and be done with it. It'd be easier for me. Hey, man, how you doing, bro? Yeah, I was, can I get, it'd just be easier to be like, you know what, man, just stop by the house and take this. I don't got to be in this conversation no more. It'd be easier. But because I'm principled, it's like, well, now, hold on. Because, brother, you ain't been working for how long? I got work. You want, you can come take this. Well, no, I don't want to do that. Oh, but you want some money. So I'm gonna hit you with principal questions. You follow? And now that means I got to be on the phone with you longer, and you ain't gonna like me so much. And I would prefer that you like me. I would prefer for it to be a quick conversation. Y'all follow? You're constantly reactive instead of proactive. That's what happens when you're living without principles. When you're living without principle, you chase trends over. You chase trends or emotions versus truth. Oh, that's the latest trend. But what is it? But what does it lead to? What does it mean? Like, what's the truth about it? When you're living your life without principles, you feel busy, but you don't see a lot of progress. There's always something to do, but nothing's being built. When you're living based on preferences, well, I prefer to go here and I prefer to do that and I prefer to this. Some people are like, I don't even live my life based on preferences, man. And I'm telling you, like, if you're not living principle, that's what's happening. You prefer to just do what other people tell you. You prefer to just lay down and let them have their way. Like, that's what you prefer. You don't want to fight back. So that's your preference. Principles require you to fight, by the way. Principles will create an argument between you and your spouse. Well, I don't understand why, we just can't do that. It's like, no, that's not how we move it. Like I'm stuck here. So this is going to be, we ain't going to be getting along this week because I'm stuck here. And it's okay. Right? Because I'm not stepping over this principle. My preference would be for you and I to be on the same page right now. My preference would be that we all love EW, right? That would be my preference. But based on this principle, I'm holding my ground. Why? Because I want a predictable result in my family, in my home, in my marriage. Here's an example of the cost of living without principles. So there's a principle called the principle of opportunity cost. Okay? I got principles for days, by the way. There's a principle called the principle of opportunity cost. And the principle of opportunity cost says that if a person says yes to everything, that they actually spread themselves too thin for the thing they're supposed to do. That's the principle of opportunity cost. The principle of opportunity cost requires that you say no to almost everything. The principle of opportunity cost says if you don't say no to almost everything, you'll never get what you intend to get done. Let me give you a personal example again. I just finished up a book. It's with the editors now. I was telling our day when we came in, brother, I might have to do a little tweaking here and there. They come back. What about this? We got a conversation Monday. But it's done. It took me from mid-May to now. So what is that? It's August 10th. Little under 90 days, maybe 75, 80 days to write this entire book. All right. Now, I've been working on another book since 2017. That book ain't done yet. It's still not done. Here's the point I'm making. I just started and finished that book in 80 days. It's going to be on the market. It's going to be in hard form. You got to buy it. It's coming. I'm going to talk about it. Don't worry. All right. I'm excited about it. But you know how much I had to say no to in the last 75 to 80 days to produce that book? The principle of opportunity cost. If I say yes to everything, I can't create anything. One of the reasons so many of us are stressed out and burnt out is because we're living without principle. We're just living without principles. One of the reasons so many of us have poor alignment with our values. Let me explain this. What is poor alignment with our values? I believe, this audience, if you listen to me, I firmly believe that you are operating your life based on a certain set of believed values, things that you value. There's certain things that you fundamentally believe or value. Problem is, you may not prefer it. You believe it, there's a part of you that's that's true. The same way I dare you were the principle of healthy eating. Where it's man, if it's predictable, I'm going to get the right results for sure. Oh, but wait, that does taste good. Right? So I know this food is better for me. That's a fundamental value system. Okay? Now, values don't necessarily dictate preferences. It's the principle that can break a preference. And so now, if I have these values, but I'm not committed to principles, there's no alignment. I'm out of personal integrity. And if I'm out of personal integrity, I'm out of power. I have no personal power. If I don't have personal power, I can't create anything. This is why I believe so many of us are consumers versus creators. Because we're in poor alignment with our values. We're out of integrity. And then what that produces is regret. Because now time is passing and I'm not creating anything, but I was created to create, which means that I have this thing inside of me that is saying create, create, create. And I have these ideas and I have these wants and these desires that aren't being fulfilled because I'm living a life that's based on my preferences and not my principles. God's principles. So then what happens is I wake up and now I got to deal with regret. So on top of all the things I'm feeling, all the emotions I'm feeling, now I have to deal with regret. And the biggest thing most of us regret is repeating the same mistake over and over again. I could go through story after story. I'm sitting in my barber seat. He's telling me about a brother that separated from his wife, and during the separation, he got involved with another woman, got pregnant. Now him and his wife are back together, and they got to deal with the regret of that separation. People like, and by the way, don't focus on the stories. Focus on where you show up like that, right? Where you show up where you show up that way. Like, what is the cost? What is the cost of not living your life in alignment with principles? What's the cost? Now, as a man, let's dissect that real quick, this particular brother. Because I can see how the preference is, I got a break from this woman. I'm about to go out here and do whatever I want to do. And because of who she's been, she don't deserve me showing up well. She don't deserve me showing up well. But what about you, bro? Like, what do you deserve? Do you deserve that? You follow, like sometimes we so focused on the other person and what they shouldn't have and what they shouldn't get. You forget that, okay, but if you don't, it ain't about them. It's about you. Who do you intend to be despite the separation? What are the principles that you're going to follow despite what your wife does? Despite how she shows up? Like, who are you going to be? And by the way, if principles were easy, everybody would follow. I got this buddy of mine, and he will call me up, and he's a millionaire. He's doing well for himself. He'll call me up, and he'll be like, "Hey, here's what's going on in my business right now, Linnell. I need some advice." And he knows I'm going to give him principled advice. It's not his preference. Almost every time as I'm giving him the advice, I can hear him going, because he knows it's true, right? But it's not his preference. When I tell you this man has been on a yo-yo, and again, this is the principle gap, knowing versus living, because he will call and get good, sound business advice, right? It's a good personal friend of mine. And he'll get a contract, multi-million-dollar, boom, everything's good. Call, get the advice, doesn't take the advice, right? Money gone. Now he's trying to figure it all out. He'll call me when he's like, man, I'm in between, bro. It's crazy right now. I'll give him some advice. And when he's flying low, he'll take it. Why? Because it's predictable. It's predictable to get him back to where he wants to be, right? Then he'll take the advice, get back where he wants to be, call me when he's on top. Hey, man, I got this going on in my business. Like, here's the problem. Then I can give him principled advice again. Ah, man, it's always the same thing with you. Yeah, And then, so then his business is like a yo-yo. Like, it's like a roller coaster, you know what I'm saying? And he's going through these stressors, and, you know, I see him, I'm like, what's going on? Bro, stressed out. Yeah. And he just started laughing. What do you mean, yeah? Well, when you live based on preferences, you're going to be stressed out. You're going to be stressed out. Money don't take that away. What's my point? Many people, they know good advice when they hear it. The problem is they don't apply it because they prefer not to. Preferences. Like, you know, many folks listen to me every Sunday and will turn around and do something the direct opposite of what you just heard. They will listen to it and say, man, that brother know he talks some truth. And then turn around and do the direct opposite and act surprised when things don't turn out the right way. So why the gap? Why is there this principle gap? Why is there this chasm between knowing something and living it? I believe the first piece is a full lack of intentionality. Like a full lack, just like, who do you intend to be? Man, let me tell y'all something. The intention that God has set for my life is not something I always prefer. Y'all hear me? Like, there are times where I do not prefer to be the bigger person. There are times where I prefer to show up a different way. Like, I prefer, like, you get what I'm going? Like, but because there's this purpose thing that I tethered myself to. Are you all following? Because there's this purpose thing that I've tethered myself to, there are times where I just don't do what I prefer. I follow the principle. Because I've come to realize that if I live my life based on short-term comfort, I will never get the long-term gain. Here's a great thing about living a principled life. There's certain things about living a principled life that it just provides. One is stability. How many folks want that? Stability. Like, my life isn't taking sharp turns because I'm following predictable principles. So I'm staying on the path, on the principle path. As soon as I acquiesce to a preference, it could take a sharp turn somewhere. Everything can fall apart. Well, I preferred that, but woo, did it hurt. So principles provide stability and direction. Think about it this way. If I'm principled, which means that I'm constantly moving in the same direction, at some point I pick up momentum, which means I'm moving in that direction faster and faster every day. You know, folks get mad because the rich get richer. But it's a direction thing. They've been moving in that direction already. And they're following certain financial principles. They've been following those financial principles already. And so they ain't going to do nothing but move faster. And here I am, well, not me, but somebody else, struggling in poverty because I won't follow principles. And so I'm moving in different directions all the time, always moving in a different direction, trying to figure out why I can't pick up any momentum and quicken my pace. Principles provide stability, direction, and get this, resilience. Because if something's happening on the outside that I don't like, What I know is that if I follow the principle, eventually it will self-correct. So it gives me a different type of resilience in my life. Let me keep just doing the things I know to do. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. It still don't look good out there. But if I follow these principles, I know that it will self-correct. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Resilience, right? Man, you still working on that? I would have gave up by now. Well, yeah, you would have given up, but I'm living in alignment with principles, and principles have promises. Principles provide predictable results. And so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Because eventually what I do believe is going to happen is as I move in this direction, it's going to continue to provide me the stability I've always had, even if it doesn't feel stable now. It's going to continue to provide me the stability I've always had because I'm following the principle 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Resilience. What are the things that matter the most to you in your life? This matters the most. When I think about my own life, number one, my purpose and spirituality. Like that's gotta be top. And then number two, my relationships, my marriage, my relationship with my wife, my children, right? My family. And then behind that, my health. Say, man, this man ain't talked about working money yet. Those are the top three for me. Now, my purpose encompasses my work. That makes sense. And that's number one. So there's some things that, you know, and my wife can tell you this, is like, well, if it's purpose-based, there's, you know, honey, I gotta handle this, right? Because it's my reason for being. It's who I am. It's part of my identity. So what are yours? You can steal mine if you don't have any. But you got to believe it, and it's got to be something you want. It's got to be something you desire. So that's what, but what are yours? How are you living your life day in and day out? How are you aligning yourself day in and day out? What are the things, the three things that matter the most to you in your life? Three things that matter the most to you in your life. Go ahead and put them in the comments there, Facebook. I want to read a few of them off. Those were mine. Let's see what other people. Health, wealth, and family. Joyce said God, marriage, and health. Right? Let's see if there's some on YouTube here. But you guys get the point. What are the top three things that matter to you in your life? So here's the next question I want you to ask. Now that you know those things, right? I like Joyce's. Let's take hers. They line very well with mine. Right? Purpose and spirituality really is God. So if that's the number one principle, right? The number one thing, like that's what I desire most, then do I have a clear principle that guides me in that area of my life? If I'm saying that the life that I live, these are the three most important things to me in this life. Is this adding up, y'all? Is 2 + 2 = 4 on this? These are, because I didn't tell you what they were. I didn't tell you they have to be these things. I'm telling you for you to figure out what are the most important things to me. What are the most important things to me? And then based on what's most important to you, like the three things that are most important to you, then the next question is, for number one, what principle are you aligned with that's going to give you predictable results in that the number one area of your life? Is that a reasonable question to somebody? Is that reasonable? What is the number one principle? You might say, well, Linnell, that's a good question. I don't know. Now, you want to listen to this series. You want to align, like you want to listen to this series, you want to align with me on this series. I'm telling you. Like you don't want to miss this one. So somebody said faith is number one. What is your number one faith principle? This is how you live. When matters of faith hit you, like you fall on this principle. It's predictable. What's that principle? So that's the next step. What are the three key areas of my life? And then the question of, do I have a clear principle guiding me in all three areas? Or am I just winging it? Because if you're winging it, you're likely looking at one of those areas saying, and this area of my life is not where I want it to be, though. Because if you're winging it, what that tells me is you're allowing your preferences to dictate that part of your life. And if this part of your life is that important to you, isn't it time to surrender to a principle? So how does one choose the right principle for them? Well, first you have to know what you value. What are your values? Because you don't want to have a principle that doesn't align with your values, right? Your belief system is your values are your belief system. What's your belief system? Your principles should align with the things that matter most to you. So what are your values? Well, Coach, I don't even know if I'm clear on my values. Well, now we're starting to get there. Now we're starting to get there. Maybe that's the place to start for you. What is it that you value? What are your values? And then what I want you to do is once you identify your values, maybe it just might be worth your time to get familiar with some principles and laws. I think it was a couple of years ago. I taught them the 12 universal laws, 7 of which are the Hermetic principles. Hermes from ancient Kemet distinguished these principles, wrote them down, and then they hid them away. So much so that when you say something's Hermetic, it means to be a secret. Y'all not even supposed to. Here's the thing. There's knowledge that we have now that we're not even supposed to know. Like, you weren't supposed to know. They hid it away. You wonder why our ancestors were spinning? They didn't have this knowledge. Now we got the knowledge. We won't even use it. Many of them would turn over in their graves. They knew how much you knew. That you aren't applying to your life. They'd be like, child, what's wrong with you? Turn over in their grave. So you clarify your principles, and then you start to identify proven laws. There are proven laws in history. You look at history, you see the laws play out. The fall of Rome. It's scary to watch America go right down that same path. Last time I talked about America in this way, I got an email from somebody. They were like, as a God-fearing man, I would believe that you loved your country enough not talk about it that way. And I was like, I wrote them back. It was real simple. I said, I love my country enough to talk about it. You got to be blind not to know the history of Rome and look at America and think we're going in a different direction. Right? Proven principles. Proven principles. There are proven laws and principles in science. The law of entropy. That anything left to itself will decay. You go ahead, close a room in your house. Just leave it. Don't go back in for a few years. You can leave it clean if you want, right? Don't make a difference. When you go back in, it's going to be dirty. The law of entropy. Things aren't going to be where you left them. How did that fall down? The law of entropy. Science has laws. Guess who else you can find laws in? Successful people. Successful people are principled people. There are certain principles. You know, people get mad when I say you can learn a lot from Trump. He follows certain principles. He couldn't be successful otherwise. You don't have to agree with him, right? But there are principles that are in place. You be like, well, he don't believe in the principle of telling the truth. Well, maybe. But he believes in other principles that he predictably implements. And then I would challenge you that if you don't have set principles today, test them. Test it in your life. So, you know, I'm going to test this principle of fasting and cleansing one time. Give it one shot. If you've never cleansed before, you know, give it a shot. If you've never fasted, 36 hours, give it a shot. See if it actually works. See if the principle proves itself. Principles prove themselves under pressure. See if it proves. Test the principle. Test it out. I'm going to do this and see what happens. And then, as you identify these principles, commit to them. Now, you got to have some level of practical application, because if you've been living an unprincipled life, a life based on preferences, this is not easy work. I mean, especially, I'm off in 3 minutes. Your survival mechanism is going to be like, let's get as far away from this conversation as possible. Unless you're a Slayer Goals member, you're going to be with me in 30. By the way, if you want to be a Slayer Goals member, you can go to SlayerGoals.com, hit the membership button. Membership is $70. Hey, man, and I'm going to really talk about this membership and what we're doing in 2026. Because I'm doubling down on that, too. $70 a month. We meet 2 times a month, where you can begin to really take these principles and apply them. And you can't tell me that living a principled life and learning how to live a principled life and follow a principled life ain't worth $840 a year. We will waste that money on less. So here's some practices to end the show. And then I want to talk just 1 minute about the compounding impact of principles. Maybe that's next week. We'll see. But right now, set a morning intention. Pick one principle to guide the day. Like, I'm going to practice this principle. And then ask yourself, as you're making decisions, does this decision align with that principle? And just follow it for a week and see what happens. And then based on how the week ends, ask yourself, did I live in alignment with my principles, or did I miss somewhere? But I can almost guarantee you, if you live in alignment with the principles, you're going to see results right away. If you don't, well, you know. That's the first practice. And then try that in a wash, rinse, repeat cycle. Thank you for watching Inspirational Perspective. If you love this show and you want to see more content like this, you can go right here. And if you like this subject and you want to see much more content that we have available for you, just click the button here. As always, thanks for watching. Be sure to watch the show live, 7 a.m. every Sunday morning on WVON Radio, or you can catch it right here on YouTube or Facebook.com/Coach Linnell Harris. Be sure to hit that like button. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so we can get more content just like this to you.